ko Kirsty Gillooly tōku ingoa, no tamaki makaurau ahau, he kaimahi ahau ki Sport New Zealand Ihi Aotearoa. So thank you so much for having me along today, and Holly for the invitation. I'm quite new to Sport New Zealand. I started in this current role about a year ago. The role is a brand new one for Sport New Zealand, and it's a brand new topic for us. It's both an internally facing focus as well as into the sector. The thing that surprised me the most, I guess, with starting in this role is how many people have said to me, what does climate change have to do with sport? And I might just grab my wee clicker. Whenever they ask me this, I really wish I had this video to play, so I'm going to play it for you today. So if you were at Connections Conference in 2023, this will be really familiar. So this was put together for that conference, which had a focus on climate.
Yesterday was Auckland's wettest day on record.
An entire summer's worth of rain fell in a matter of hours.
People want to stay off the roads and avoid any unnecessary travel.
4 tornadoes have hit New Zealand in just the past 3 days, and there is a warning of more to come.
This is whānau whare, and this has been destroyed from Cyclone Gabrielle.
Homes flooded, thousands of people evacuated, entire regions underwater and completely cut off.
On the 13th of February 2023, Hawke's Bay was hit by Cyclone Gabrielle. Whānau, kura and communities were displaced, and as a result, play active recreation sport wasn't able to go ahead.
Evacuations have taken place in the Upper South Island as wet weather continues to punish the region.
Extreme weather events are constantly occurring, causing devastation in their paths.
Changes are needed to how cities are designed to reduce emissions and improve resilience to severe weather events.
We got absolutely smashed by the flooding. All of our tennis courts, our beloved club rooms and squash courts were not just flooded, the amount of current and tide that came through here caused significant damage. So we had to shut the entire club down. People come to play sport and to group as communities, and yeah, that was lost. And there were so many lessons learned, but the main lesson that I took away from it is if you don't have courts, you don't have a club.
For lots of kids, they're really active, and it's like hard to, I don't know, have fun, you know, and they're staying home, no idea what to do. Also, you can't get fit like at home very easily.
Climate change is having a significant impact on weather events, and that is impacting the ability of people to participate in sport and recreation.
There was a consistent depressing theme to the 2023 ASB Classic.
We lost 8 out of 20 sessions of play during the tournaments. That was unheard of.
I think kei te kōrero te tai au ki a tātou. There is really a message to us from our environment that we need to think about our actions and what we're doing to our environments as humans.
We need to get real and adapt to the fact that the climate is changing, and that particularly outdoor events are going to be subject to more disruption. So knowing that and preparing for that is a critical part of adapting to a changing climate.
We have a real role to play in what is a significant societal issue. Our ability to reach and influence people can have a real impact. So we can take a leadership role in combating climate change.
Sports people and their peak bodies and organisations can play an active part in understanding how the climate is changing, advocating for actions which will reduce human activity in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, and doing what we can to make sure informed public opinion supports climate action.
We also need to be advocating to local government and to government about ensuring that our sport facilities are suitable for and will continue to be suitable for outdoor sport and active recreation. If our facilities are not going to be suitable because of climate change and the weather implications, then that's something that we can all have a voice in.
The Hawke's Bay community is resilient. Play, active rec and sport will continue to go ahead and find a way to get more rangatahi and tamariki more active more often.
This will happen again. And as a club, as an organisation, I think we'll be a little bit more ready for it. And I'm optimistic that if we're pragmatic and work in conjunction with council and look for solutions to the problem, I think we'll be better off next time round.
We will survive. The challenge we face is how do we increase the chances that survival will actually be better than it might otherwise have been.
Yeah, we should back ourselves. We can find a way through this. We do have the ability to impact our future.
So yeah, the video very much spells out exactly why climate change and sport go together. And I think we heard earlier today that we don't have sport if we've got no environment, right? So it's a very integral thing. For Sport New Zealand, this is our vision, everybody active. And the changing climate definitely puts this at risk. We know that participation levels are already being affected, and it's not so easy to be active when it's too hot, too wet, too windy, too boggy, facilities are flooded, seas are stormy, mountains have poor snow, or access to our recreation spaces is restricted due to damaged infrastructure or debris on the beach. We know the impact of climate change isn't equitable. It will be those least active and under-resourced who will suffer the most. The consequences of climate change will be both direct, where and when the activity can take place, and how people can participate, and indirect as local, national and commercial priorities and consumer behaviour and social expectations change in response to climate change. And like the rest of society, the sport and physical activity sector is contributing to and exacerbating these effects. As a result of this, Sport New Zealand's categorised in its top risks report, still very fancy, isn't it, as high risk that impacts of climate change on the group and the play, active recreation and sport sector may impact our ability to achieve our strategic objectives. In response to this risk, Sport New Zealand identified opportunities to elevate environmental action in its most recent strategy. As an organisation that achieves its ambitions largely through its investments into and the activities of its partners, a key strategic priority for us is the capability and resilience of our partner organisations. And new to this strategy is environmental responsibility as a component of capability. Our goal for partner organisations through this strategic period is that they are aware of and reduce their negative impacts on the environment and are responsive to the changing landscape of our natural environment. As a kaitiaki of the play, active rec and sport sector, Sport New Zealand has a role to play in climate action across our three key spheres of influence. We've made a commitment to reduce our operational carbon footprint as an entity in the Carbon Neutral Government Programme, and sector consultation has indicated that the sport and physical activity sector are keen to act and want Sport New Zealand to provide support, guidance and leadership. And finally, we have a role advocating for and with the sector. So what are we doing to reduce our impact? So funnily enough, this started in about 2020, and it was a staff-led initiative. There was a group down in Wellington who were very passionate about climate change and carbon reduction, and they started an initiative to start measuring our footprint. Then in 2023, we became a participant of the Carbon Neutral Government Programme. So part of that program is that we've had to establish reduction targets consistent with a 1.5 degree pathway. We verify our emissions through Toitū, which is an independent auditor, and we report emissions annually to the CNGP. Our targets are 21% reduction by 2025 from our base year and 42% by 2030, and we're now in the third year of our participation in that program. This is a little profile graph of our reduction targets and how we're tracking to date. You can see that in 2025 so far, so that's halfway through the year, we believe we're on track to meet that 2025 target, which is our hard target. But that 2030 target, that's going to be particularly challenging. Our emissions come from flying, as I'm sure most of you would appreciate. There's rats and mice everywhere else, but for us to actually achieve that 2030 target, flying is going to be our biggest challenge. Technology really isn't happening fast enough, and New Zealand doesn't really have great alternatives to flying, so it's a challenging one, but it has encouraged us to look at how we deliver our key programs and support partners and use technology to connect with each other. One thing that we are often discussing at work, and particularly with our executive team, is that reducing our carbon emissions cannot be at the expense of delivering core business. But there are opportunities to be more efficient, and of course it keeps the accounting team happy as it's got the upside of saving some money. Came across this the other day, and it spoke to me as I was trying to understand the challenge of why it is that with a climate crisis that requires urgent action at scale and across a whole economy, that the action doesn't necessarily match the urgency. I was reading a report the other day from the World Economic Forum, and I thought I'd share an interesting slide from their Global Risks report. Let's sit here. This is the 20th edition of this report, and it's based on data from a Global Risks Perception Survey. So the people that were participants in the survey were a collective of over 900 global leaders across academia, business, government, international organisations, and civil society. I think that's us. It also leverages insights from 100 thematic experts. I'm not sure who they are, but the researchers in the room would let us know, including risk specialists who formed the Global Risks Report Advisory Board, the Global Future Council on Complex Risks, and the Chief Risks Officers community. So I think they know what they're talking about. Anyway, they were asked to rank by severity from a list of 33 risks, how they saw those risks on a global scale over a 2-year and 10-year period. And when I saw this, I thought, isn't that fascinating? In 10 years' time, we all believe that the number one most scariest thing that can happen to us is going to be environmental issues. And yet right now, or in 2 years' time, we know extreme weather events are a problem, but we don't appreciate all of the other things. And yet, in order to prevent this from being an absolute basket case, we need to be looking at it right now. So it really spoke to me around why it is in most organisations when operationally you spend all your time in the near term, so you spend your time thinking about this hockey tournament or this funding round or getting enough volunteers to run our organisations, worrying about this year's budget, we just don't have the capacity to think about out 10 years what it might look like. And so for me, this is why at Sport New Zealand, I'm really, really passionate that we begin to have this conversation at the board table. So our elected representatives are there to think about strategy beyond the next 2 years. They're asked to think out 10 years. And this is, for me, it speaks quite strongly to why that's so important. So what's next for us? Obviously elevating that conversation at the board table. I was going to say that our board, as much as they are completely across this work and supportive of it, and they understand its necessity in the strategy, it hasn't yet made sustainability feel like a core consideration in our decision making. And there's an opportunity to build this competency over time. And I say over time here because it will take time. We need to help the board and the wider team connect to the why and understand the risk climate change presents to our mission of everybody active. Nike uses a really simple statement to connect this kaupapa with their own purpose, and that is Nike can't fulfil its mission of bringing innovation and inspiration to every athlete in the world if the planet is a disaster. Likewise, as a sector, we can't increase the physical activity levels of Aotearoa New Zealand if the planet is a disaster. Working together with our partners is critical to achieving our strategic focus areas and theirs, and building resilience across the sector. In a resource-strapped sector, which we've heard a lot about this morning, momentum is understandably slow, but it is building. Through our latest investment process, we had 19 partners identify environmental sustainability initiatives as a priority in their investment commitments. And Sport New Zealand has produced some interesting discussion articles and guides to progress the conversation and help support the sector. We've also had some amazing partnerships with others to deliver some programs that provide opportunities to increase the physical activity levels of rangatahi and tamariki and protect the environment. So I'm just going to share some of those with you. Again, Connections Conference. So this was last year. This was the inaugural Environmental Sustainability Award, and we had these amazing finalists. All 8 of those guys do some really, really brilliant and different work. And they would be, if you wanted to connect in to understand what they were doing more, I know that they would be absolutely happy to talk to anyone. They're all very passionate. The winner of this was that North Harbour Hockey Association. So I'm going to read their little blurb that they provided. They're breaking new ground for the role of sport in sustainability thanks to a bold habitat restoration project. Te Hononga a Iwi, Restoring Rosedale Park, is a local project to turn 10,000 square metres of steep, previously weed and rubbish-riddled riparian land into a model for environmental sustainability. In just over 2 years, 6,000 native trees and 6,000 square metres of native cover crops have been planted, bees are buzzing and pests are controlled. It's the first time a sports body has led an environmental restoration of this scale in Aotearoa. It's brought together 46 diverse community and corporate partnerships and an impressive 2,500 volunteers from across all age groups, from school kids to retirement villages. It is right on a retirement village. This engagement creates direct community connection to the environment, to climate resistance and to sport. It's also created opportunities for the people in these groups to connect with one another and to other sports at the park, not just hockey. And I think we've heard that often this morning, how important those connections are. They believe it's a win for well-being, social and physical health, as well as the health of our ecosystems. This award is going to be an annual event, so if anybody out there has a story to tell, we really do encourage those entries for this year's event. Runa, I'm not sure if Runa's come to this community yet, but this is a very cool Yachting New Zealand initiative. They partner with local schools and the local sailing club, and it's a program that's run through the schools. It's taught through 3 different modules that are made up of in-classroom learning experiences delivered by teachers, supported by a sailing experience, so the kids get to go out on wee boats, and followed by a call for learners to take action. Each module is designed for students in years 4 through to 10, but can easily be adapted for older or younger children. The first club that started this was down in Wellington. It's the Worsley Club, and the ongoing year-on-year experience that these kids were having was absolutely amazing. Sport New Zealand partnered with Runa through the In Our Backyard project, which was a learning with sport framework that guides NSOs, schools and kura to implement new ways of working with each other to achieve aspirations for tamariki and rangatahi. Each module includes opportunities to develop water skills for life and safer boating skills to ensure that Kiwi kids learn and develop the knowledge and skills to safely enjoy our marine environment. So Runa is this year getting expanded into another 8 clubs, from what I understand. So it's a fantastic initiative. Tūmanawa, we heard about that a little earlier. So Tūmanawa Active Aotearoa is a $16 million activation fund distributed annually by 18 regional sports trusts across the country. The fund promotes physical activity in local communities to improve the play, active rec and sport opportunities for tamariki and rangatahi, particularly those less active. Tūmanawa Network have 8 shared commitments, one of which is environment, with a commitment to adopting an environmental lens over investments and working collectively to reduce the impact on the climate. I'll just do a wee call out to Sport Northland, who have taken the commitment a step further, and they've adopted a funding framework that has Te Taio as one of its 3 key priorities, and they're supporting some really interesting initiatives in that region, finding that kids, or lots of their kids who are not particularly sporty, getting behind tree planting and activities that restore the whenua are getting them active as well as doing the climate good. On our way is the latest initiative that we've partnered with, and this is a partnership with Ministry of Ed and Sport New Zealand, and the RST Network. So the Ministry of Education, like Sport New Zealand, are part of the Carbon Neutral Government Programme, and unfortunately for them, they have to measure the carbon footprint of every single state school and kura in New Zealand. Not an easy task. They've developed this incredible data set that can do this, and they are now able to produce the carbon footprint for each state school. And so On Our Way offers each school a unique all-of-school opportunity to build and develop climate literacy skills for Akonga. It uses the same process that businesses, councils, governments and international bodies undertake to measure, predict and respond to climate change. Schools can explore and participate in discovering their transport environment, how it's changed over time, what it's used for, the climate impact of that use, what choices are currently available and what that transport could look like in the future. It starts with them understanding their own carbon footprint. They carry out a data collection and analysis, which is literally a survey saying, how did you get to school today? And the teachers provide a climate literacy view of transport across the different components of the school curriculum. Each school's carbon footprint provides the school with a tool to measure their impact and influence over our changing climate. For us, focusing on a shift to getting kids active on their way to and from school makes this a joint ambition to ensure that school travel is greener and healthier. So our futurist was mentioned a little earlier, David Adams. If you haven't had the opportunity to meet him, he's a laugh. He's known as Doom Dave at work, so he is trying to rebrand this year. Anyway, he has written 2 amazing reports. I don't know if you've not read them, make yourself a really long cup of tea and have a read. They are amazing. They are sobering. So Dave uses scenarios that bring plausible futures to life and helps to consider the different possibilities and anticipate some of the elements to consider as the future evolves in different ways. These scenarios are constructed by exploring how drivers of change may play out, and they explore different combinations of these drivers to provide the basis for the future scenarios. The Drivers of Change report clearly has a component on climate change. And some of the impacts that Dave identified through the study was impacts including increased cancellations, damaged facilities, access to insurance, safety of participants, administrators and spectators, changing delivery formats, an increase in mandatory environmental metrics and compliance, and social licence. And it's interesting, isn't it, because perhaps except for their social licence thing, all of those impacts that Dave believes will happen in our future have happened in Tairāwhiti, and we've talked about them this morning. The upshot is that any scenario, under any scenario, the sport and recreation sector looks profoundly different to today's delivery model. Dave's report challenges us to consider what questions we should be asking ourselves today to prepare for the uncertainty. And again, it's a pretty sobering read, but it is definitely a valuable resource. Another Sport New Zealand publication was from May of last year, and it's the Environmental Sustainability Guidelines for Spaces and Places. This was produced in conjunction with HDT Architecture, Becker, Project Work, Visitor Solutions, and a project working group comprising of people from across the sector and the environment sector. It provides practical guidelines to help territorial authorities and sport and rec organisations navigate the range of issues relating to environmental sustainability that affects spaces and places for play, active rec and sport in New Zealand. The guidelines apply specifically to the environmentally sustainable inception, design, construction and operation of spaces and places, and it's intended to help organisations identify and adopt sustainability measures that will help to improve present operations as well as support decision making for future investment. The guide also speaks to the benefits of environmental sustainability. I think one of the interesting takeouts from this for me was that the best thing we can do is not build new facilities. So clubbing together with others, making use with what you've got, that's really is the best environmental outcome. So in the pipeline for us, we've had a number of requests for resources to support partners to get started or progress climate action. So in 25, we will be working to create an online resource hub on our website. Hopefully our website can handle it. There are already many resources available, and we won't be reinventing the wheel, but the goal is to collate relevant and practical resources that are suitable in a New Zealand context. We're also keen to explore options for a sector vulnerability assessment. The first objective of this will be to develop a set of climate change scenarios that can be used by industry participants to understand the physical and transition climate-related risks that they face and identify opportunities. The second objective will be to develop an adaptation roadmap with clear objectives and tangible actions that participants in the sector can implement. So the goal off the back of this work will be to reduce sector vulnerability to the impacts of climate change, build adaptive capacity and strengthen resilience. But again, we are very much in the early stages of discussing how this might look. And it potentially will tie in with some of the work that the government is doing on their National Adaptation Plan. The third area of focus for us is advocacy, and we've heard about this a lot this morning. Sport New Zealand has a role to advocate for climate action to support the play, active, rec and sport sector. In fact, the whole sector has an important role in responding to climate change, given our ability to reach and influence large volumes of people. Going beyond individual actions to implement systemic change and large-scale transformation is a goal. Sport and rec has an important role. No, I've just said that. To achieve the global ambition to limit warming and reduce climate chaos requires a systemic response. That was a very muddled description. Addressing the root cause of climate change by fundamentally altering the underlying systems and structures that contribute to GHG emissions is key. Our sector can have a role in this to advocate across areas such as active transport routes, investment in clean energy and building resilience into our infrastructure. This is the challenge, right? We're all busy, we're all resource strapped, and addressing climate change can seem overwhelming. But there are strategies that can help climate considerations without overextending capacity. Our goal is to make this conversation a boardroom priority, and we would encourage you to do the same in your organisations with your boards and elected members. There are some great resources available to get you started, and I just pulled together from the Institute of Directors resource site a little summary of how they would recommend you would approach this task. Some of this won't be relevant for the smaller organisations, it really is for the larger ones. So governance, not surprisingly, it starts with governance and having a big picture orientation. Sustainability strategy is not compliance, and understanding your risks and translating that into opportunities is the goal. Considering how climate impacts, e.g. extreme weather events, affect the communities you serve, how might your organisation support the community in an extreme weather event, and who could you team up with? You guys have done an amazing job for that already. Identifying synergies where climate action can also deliver social or economic benefits, such as reducing energy costs through energy efficiency, and seek out grants or funding sources specifically available for sustainability and climate resilience. Achieving meaningful and lasting impact requires collective action that brings together diverse perspectives, resources and expertise. Knowing your numbers. Most organisations have easy wins, and they can look at implementing or enhancing actions straight away, such as through waste reduction and recycling, energy efficiencies, water conservation, procurement practices and reducing travel. So this is a large part of what we've been doing at Sport New Zealand the last year. These can lead to a cumulative effect. As I say at work, 1 tonne of carbon anywhere is 1 tonne of carbon. So understanding your organisation's carbon footprint and setting targets for reduction. Learning and sharing. Partner with other organisations to share knowledge, resources and best practice on sustainability. This is one area where we don't compete with each other, we're all working together. Join coalitions or networks that offer training, support and collective advocacy, enabling access to information, guidance and case studies. And again, the Chapter Zero New Zealand, that's an Institute of Directors initiative. It's free, the resources are there, sitting there, and it's actually very good. Recognising that ignoring climate change could exacerbate future financial and operational risks, and that comes back to that survey If we ignore it until 10 years' time, the transition is going to be really painful. If we start now, it will be more affordable, even though it's expensive now. Climate change represents both risks and opportunities, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was involved with the surfing community, and he talked all the time about opportunities. I'm not sure if he's still here. And I think this is something that often is missed with climate change. We talk about it with really grave faces and big alarm bells, and there are opportunities. It might look different to how we deliver things now, but it doesn't have to be bad. And tell your stories. People love to hear what everyone's up to. Integrating climate change and avoiding greenwashing are really important. Transparency and accountability can attract supporters who value sustainability, enhance your social licence to operate, and respond to changing stakeholder expectations. It might open doors to additional funding or resources. Start a friend. If you need help, ask. Collaborate with others, tap into the many resources and practical toolkits that can support boards and leaders, and we are also here to help if we can. I'm not sure if anyone is aware of this. So the Climate Change Commission are calling for evidence to help Aotearoa New Zealand adapt to the impacts of climate change. The work's going to inform the second National Climate Change Risk Assessment, and that assessment looks at all the climate risks the country faces and identifies priorities to focus on, particularly looking at the risks to our economy, society, environment and ecology that stem from the physical impacts of climate change, such as rising sea levels and more frequent and intense storms. They're not looking at risks related to emissions and efforts to reduce them. So what they are looking for are high quality and credible evidence, including mātauranga Māori, to help understand what climate risks our nation faces, what the consequences of those risks are over time, and what actions can and are being taken to address those risks. So Sport New Zealand is going to put a submission in on behalf of the sport and rec sector, and we really encourage everybody who has something to say and has some evidence, and there's a lot of it here in this room, to also raise a submission. And we're very happy to help you with that if you would like to do that, so just reach out. This little quote speaks for itself. We always think that in our little tiny part of the world that we can have little impact on the global environment, but we also know that we can either sit on our hands and leave our future to others, or we can give it our all and be an example of what can be achieved when everyone paddles the waka together. And that's all I got.